It isn't uncommon at all in the world of game development for a studio to want to branch out into other IPs while also developing their mainline franchise side by side. Maybe they want to try their hand at a different genre of game, such as a little side project while they continue to work on their mainline franchise, whether that be to continue updating the current game or develop the next entry in the series. With the little knowledge that I do know about game development from a friend, if a studio has the manpower, the talent, and the financial backing to do so, they will split up their developers and form a team for multiple different projects. And if this hypothetical studio doesn't have the required resources, either before or during the development process, they will cut their losses and either scrap the project or put it on hiatus until they can secure the proper funds and manpower to do so. A good majority of the time, they will not compromise the integrity and quality of their most popular franchise, and turn their backs on the player base that has supported them since the beginning. Unfortunately, Bungie as an entire studio has made some of the most out-of-touch and brain-dead decisions when it comes to their strategies within the gaming market space. Now, before I talk about current Bungie with Destiny and Marathon, this is an issue that started all the way back in 2010, with Bungie wanting to move on from the Halo franchise with their original developers. They had just finished the absolute spectacle of a trilogy and a side spinoff known as ODST, and were in the process of developing a brand new franchise, what we now know to be Destiny. With the release of Halo Reach, Bungie was not only able to leave their legacy on the Halo franchise, but were able to depart from Microsoft as a whole while focusing on Destiny. And while Bungie was done with the Halo franchise, at this time in the early 2010s, they understood that their time with the Halo franchise was over and decided to negotiate trading the Halo IP to Microsoft in exchange for Bungie's independence, rather than having burnt out developers create another Halo game, which they weren't all interested in doing. That brings us to where we are currently, with Marathon, Bungie's next game, which is a reboot in a long dormant IP. I use the term reboot loosely because in all honesty, the only real thing that the original Marathon and this new game have in common is just the name and nothing else. Where the original Marathon was a story-driven game with extensive lore, the current iteration of Marathon is going to be an extraction shooter. You know, the genre that countless other developers of mainline franchises have attempted and failed miserably at, with the only one that looks even remotely good being Arc Raiders coming out this October. But for right now, I'll give Bungie the benefit of the doubt. They did have a playtest a few months ago, which people were excited for due to their history with making incredibly smooth and responsive gameplay. However, during this playtest, the new audience they were hoping to attract, as well as the Destiny audience, found the game to be extremely lacking in every single aspect. So much so that the game was delayed indefinitely and brought back to the drawing board. And that's not even mentioning the other can of worms with the stealing of artwork. You guys know, the artwork of Marathon that they claim to not have stolen, even though their entire art department for the game was following the person whose art is the main inspiration behind this game. Once that was found out, it pushed the game back even further than it already was. Nice one, Bungie. Add that to the list of controversies you morons can't seem to keep yourselves out of. Now you're probably asking, what does this have to do with Destiny? Well, it turns out, Marathon wasn't the only game in development at Bungie during this entire fiasco. Apparently they had multiple other games being worked on at this time, which all got cancelled except for Marathon. So you can see how much they have riding on the success of Marathon. And it doesn't help the fact that they decided to do this all while renovating a brand new studio and during the global pandemic of 2020. To say their funds were already being cut thin is an understatement. But here's the issue. Bungie in their infinite wisdom thought it would be a fantastic idea to dump millions of dollars into Marathon, the extraction shooter, along with extensive amounts of developers, rather than continuing to focus on Destiny and gaining additional funds and developers before resuming work on Marathon. Now, I'm not a game developer or a game dev leader, thank God, but having this studio turn their backs on the players and the franchise that gave them such a following, even more than the Halo franchise, is extremely asinine. With the worst offender being all of the Eververse store purchases and the seasonal DLCs would go right back into Destiny's development, which would have been the obvious assumption. Since Destiny has such a massive player base, well, I should say had a massive player base, because they pretty much neglected them too. But no, instead Bungie would rather attempt to develop a brand new game in an extremely niche market. Keep in mind, guys, this news came out at the end of the 2024 fiscal year. Bungie had made such piss-poor financial decisions that they needed to do multiple rounds of layoffs and start charging more for less, while continuing to brandish around the toxic positivity mindset of Marathon. And you can see why the disdain around this game is so extremely high. And this is the part that I want to emphasize the most. Bungie cannot co-develop two of these games, because ever since Final Shape, the quality of the game has nosedived even more than it was already beginning to up to this point. More and more glitches are happening every day, the content is just flat out dog shit to try and play through, the grind is absolutely miserable, and overall, the game has turned many fans' disdain into apathy. It's no surprise at this point that Destiny 2 is being run by a skeleton crew of people who either have no idea what they are doing or simply do not choose to listen to the community. And it's gotten blatantly obvious. Adding in questionable changes on a whim, and then either immediately removing those changes due to fan backlash, or waiting until they have no other choice but to revert the changes, trying to engagement farm their player base as much as possible. The overall quality of the game has gotten worse, and frankly, it probably isn't going to get any better with the way things are currently heading. As of October 12th, 2025, the player numbers have dropped even lower than Curse of Osiris. The DLC that Bungie claims was 5 weeks away from having Destiny servers shut down. Which, if you want my opinion, that entire statement was probably bullshit, and it was probably just Bungie's way of trying to make you feel bad. Hey, feel bad for us and play our game, or else it's going to go bye-bye, even though it probably won't. And it makes it even funnier when you have people that say, just don't play the game if you don't like it, acting as if saying that will make the game any better, when in reality people have already left en masse and are continuing to do so every day. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the entire situation involving this company. They could have negotiated giving the IP to a different studio after Final Shape, doing small content updates to Destiny 2, while this hypothetical studio either develops a Destiny 3 or a Destiny Classic that people are literally begging for at this point. And Bungie could have coasted off to develop the garbage pile that is Marathon, but instead, they decided to go all in on Marathon while trying to develop Destiny at the same time, letting the Destiny franchise fester and rot, and with the recent playtests and controversy surrounding Marathon, it's looking to be as much of a $40 failure as Concord was. As much as I wish Bungie would have gone the route of negotiating the IP to some other talented developers that actually give a shit, that isn't what happened. And it's so sad that the Destiny mobile game has so many features and quality of life that people have been begging literal years for at this point, that it has led to people like me saying that the mobile version of Destiny is somehow better than the mainline games, which I never thought anybody would ever say. I am hopeful that eventually Sony will take Bungie off of Destiny's development permanently and get a more competent studio to take over and make Destiny the game we all know it can be. But I've been hoping for a few years at this point, but eventually at some point, myself and many hundreds of thousands of other players aren't going to care anymore. So, thanks for ruining one of the most beloved franchises I've ever gotten to play. Hope chasing a dying trend and not listening to your fanbase was worth it, but I'm ready to hop off this monorail now. Fellas, if you haven't already, please be sure to like and subscribe. Your viewership has been absolutely killing it lately, and I couldn't be more thankful for it. And while it's always fun to make fun of Bungie and Destiny, it is rather sad, and I want to let you guys know that me making fun of Destiny at this point isn't the only content you could find on my channel. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.